Welcome back to Tuesdays with Pops. Today we are, Dad, as you can see, is sitting in Hawaii on his lahaina. What do they call lahaina?
It's lanai. It's a
Lanai.
Hawaiian word meaning outdoor patio plus $45,000.
So Dad is sitting on his uh, lanai, which is where he's been sitting for the past couple episodes. A really beautiful spot in Kailua Kona, which you moved to almost 30 years ago. Is that right?
27 years ago.
27 years ago. So we talked about a couple episodes ago how you decided to sell the business and we're looking to move out of New Mexico. I guess the first question is, why did you want to leave Albuquerque?
You guys were gone. There wasn't much. I loved my time in Albuquerque. Albuquerque was very good to me. I had friends in New Mexico, but without you guys living there and never to return, due for a change.
And when you decided, okay, I'm going to leave Albuquerque, you looked at a couple different places where you were going to live. What were those places? And then ultimately, how did you end up in Kona?
Well, while still in New Mexico, Cindy and I both got certified as scuba divers. We went to Texas, and my brothers um, certified us in a rock quarry. All we had left to do was an open water dive in the ocean to get complete certification. So we wanted to get to water. We came to Hawaii on a holiday, did the final testing for open water certification, and then went back to New Mexico. And when we decided to move, we wanted to be near water just to take advantage of our new interest in scuba diving. First place we went was Florida, on the Florida Keys, and the diving sort of sucked. Some bad luck, nature time, no visibility. We were in a flea bag motel. It was called the Lou Key Resort. And resort, they should be sued for using the word resort because it was like a Motel 6. But it was in the Florida Keys. And while down there, I realized to see you guys on the West Coast would have meant a 2 hour drive to Miami and then a cross country air flight. Said, I'm just as close in Hawaii. Prior to that, I had maybe been to Hawaii 6 times in 12, 15 years on vacations. So it had a special meaning to me. So we came back to Hawaii doing a scouting trip, and we had appointments with realtors in Oahu, in Maui, in the Big Island, and then Maui. Went to Oahu, looked at homes on the North Shore, and it was too crowded. My thinking at why Oahu has over 1 million people, while the Big Island where we ended up has under 200,000. So I thought that'd be a nice segue from New Mexico to Hawaii. But the housing situation, you would have been living right on top of other people. All the streets had signs, lock your car. It was high crime rate in that part. So we decided I think we saw one or two homes and decided now let's go to our next step, which was the Big Island. I was turned on by a guy in Albuquerque, turned on to the very house we're still in because he had a friend who was a realtor. And we saw that house, dug it, and even we eventually blew off the Maui. We had to go to Maui because that's where our flight itineraries were taking us home from, but never even hooked up with a realtor in Maui because the Big Island just felt like home. The house was perfect for us, and it looked like a place I could enjoy the next chapter of my life. And I remember at the time thinking, well, I lived almost 25 years in New York, almost 25 years in New Mexico. This will be the nice third final chapter of my life. Then I hit my 70s and I said, oh shit, I need a fourth floor. But as we're not moving from here. We came here, we went diving, bought the house. This was like August of 1996. My deal, my deal with Ticketmaster when they bought me out was I would stay around for 6 months. So Cindy came out early. She came out in November of '96. Get the house ready. I eventually talked Fred into giving me a month off my 6 month sentence, and he said, go. So I got here in February of '97. But in the middle, I came out at Christmas time. Cindy was already here. And at that time, there was a blurb in the newspaper, which they did for years until the pandemic. There was a we had basketball leagues, and there was a little blurb in the paper saying any players interested in come down to a meeting. So I grabbed the guy from across the street, the only person I know, told me he was interested in basketball. So we go to this meeting, and the representative from the team I ended up on, the Hawk Shop, fella says to me, we might need some players. Go see John Kang at the Hawk Shop, which was the luckiest thing that happened to me in my move here. Here's the example. I go down, introduce myself to John at the Hawk Shop, and I say to John, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but I can play. And John says, what about your neighbor? What about the guy you were with? I said, well, I don't know him. He's my neighbor, but I'm assuming he's in good shape. He's an FBI agent. And John goes, ooh, he goes, some of us like to have a drink after the game. I said, oh, that won't be a problem. He goes, conspiratorially, he looks and goes, well, some of us like to smoke after the game. I said, I found my team. I found my team. Ends up Cass, the neighbor across the street, and I are two of the three Howley guys on the team. Everything else, every other player on the team was a local guy, which was a great fortuitous move because that's how I met Uncle Al and that's how I met the Kim family. They got me into golfing. They taught me how to behave like a Hawaiian. And it was just a very fortunate set of circumstances that got me on the Hawk Show. I don't know if I told the story earlier about we're playing first game. I tell Cindy, yeah, I'm going to go to play. I'm going to be mellow and work my way into this team. I come home that night and say, these guys suck. I said, I'm coming out shooting next week. And the second week I come out shooting, and by the third week, John says to me, said, now listen, we may get into fights periodically. This is a sort of rough league, and Hawaiians do play a more physical game. They don't have height, so they play a physical game. And John says to me, if we get into a fight, your only obligation is to duck. We will take care of you. So I had guys looking after me. They told the same thing to Cindy. She was paddling with a bunch of local girls. I think that's the official sport in Hawaii is outrigger paddling. And John and Al said to Cindy, any of those local girls give you trouble, just let us know. So already I was set, I was accepted. Again, basketball being an important part of my life, did that. Um, for a good dozen years. I never played golf. I played once a year prior to that. They got me into playing golf every Sunday with them, uh, which I did as much for hanging with them as for the sport. And we had some great times, some laughs. Um, they introduced medical marijuana in Hawaii, and you have to go see a doctor. And the doctor makes us a deal that if I can talk to all of you at once, as opposed to individually, I'll knock $25 off each of the fees. So we're sitting around. There were 6 or 7 of us, local guys from the basketball team, and we keep being warned: don't, you've got to have serious illness or serious pain. You can't just do it for relaxation. We still don't have any legal marijuana other than medical, no recreational. So we're sitting around, and I'm telling all my, at this time I was in my 50s, saying, "Oh, I got a bad shoulder from playing ball." Comes to Uncle Al, and Al says, "I got the flat feet," which has been an expression of ours now for 25, 26 years. I've got the flat feet. Um, Great afternoon, because this was a hour plus drive up north to go find this doctor. He was like the only doctor on the island that was certifying people. Now it's not an issue. Now we have storefronts, we have pharmacies to shop at. Oh, John would accept it as his family. We would spend Christmas Eve with them, set off fireworks, which is the Hawaiian tradition. I I've come to hate them, but it's the Hawaiian tradition of setting off fireworks for New Year's Eve. And all his kids and everybody's kids there now call me Uncle Barry. This another thing I love about Hawaii is the respect for older people. In fact, it might have been that trip to Hawaii to get certified for medical marijuana where they say to me, "You're the oldest, you sit shotgun," and that's the Hawaii tradition of respecting the older generation, which you don't find that on the mainland. More of an Eastern tradition, and it's just something I'm glad to exist in.
Especially as an older person.
Oh, exactly, exactly. I mean, there are people in their 60s now calling me uncle, right? Because it's a term of respect out here. So I accept it graciously.
You mentioned getting certified for scuba diving. Now, we were already certified because we grew up scuba diving. This was to get
Yeah.
your instructor certification. Is that correct?
Well, no. Eventually, I got my dive masters. We got certified when we were living in Albuquerque. Went to Texas. My brother started. Oh, that's right. Cindy and I go to Mexico to do our first open water dive, and we went, and then we it was so neat. We took you and Cura the next time we went to Cozumel to dive. Yeah, so we were diving before we got here. When I got here, the very first thing I did was get my dive master certification, which meant I was eligible to work in the dive industry if I was so inclined, which I wasn't. But you hold that forever. Never have to renew it.
Tell the story of where you got certified and them being the only official Grateful Dead dive shop.
Oh, that's where I got my dive. I got my dive master through Jack's Dive Locker, and Jack's Dive Locker was owned by a guy named, what's his name, Jeff. Jeff and Terry, husband and wife, owned it a lot. Jeff still is a cool, very cool guy. Totally, at the time, ignorant of the music world. So one day, this guy, way before 10, 15 years before I met him, this guy comes to town and wants to learn to scuba dive. It ends up being Jerry Garcia. Jerry liked Jeff because Jeff wasn't a fanboy. In fact, Jerry says to him once, "Hey, I'll bring you some CDs so you can hear my music." And Jeff says, "I don't even own a CD player." The second or the third time Garcia comes to dive with Jack, Jeff takes him and his 4 or 5 friends out with that Jerry brought along. Jeff takes him out diving, and when it's all done, Jeff says to them, "Jerry, I've taken groups diving before, but I've never had a group pay attention and listen and stay in the proper order, like your guys did. And Jerry goes, hey, we've been a band for 25 years. Of course we're going to do. He had the whole band with him, and Jeff had no clue.
Jerry was at that point kicking heroin, and he basically said, "The only place where I can go get that kind of feeling is scuba diving."
Is underwater. And amazingly, not really amazingly, but you would think his physiology, just because he was seriously overweight, would have been tough for him to dive. But Jeff told me he was so good with his air, not using his air, that if he went in with everybody else, when everybody came up, Jerry still had a half tank of air left. So
Wow.
he would put Jerry in the water first, just so when he'd come up, he'd have a quarter of a tank of air left. Jerry also, when we bought a boat, we first got here, which I'll get into that in a while. I bought a book. There were these man-made buoys up and down the coast that where you can tie your boat down if you want to dive at these spots. And it was Garcia's doing. Garcia tells Jeff once, call a meeting of all the dive guys. Jerry Garcia asks for a meeting, everybody shows up. And Jerry says, you guys are killing the reef throwing anchor over. He says, I will put up the money. You guys do the maintenance. And let's put permanent buoys out there where people can tie up their boat as opposed to throwing their anchors overboard. And I bought the book that had Jerry on the cover, had the location of all the buoys, and the money collected from selling the book went to maintain it. So when we owned the boat, we probably, I think there was something like 81, 82 buoys out there. The Garcia buoys, we probably hooked up to a half dozen, 10 of them various times. There's a saying in the boating world that the happiest day of your life is the day you get a boat, and the second happiest is the day you sell it. And that was very true. We bought the boat; it was fun, but this is not like Florida where you can go in and out of different waterways, where you can hook up your boat to a pier and have lunch, and then get back in your boat and go somewhere. All we could do here is go north and south. Beautiful diving, beautiful fishing, but after a while, it got kind of boring. And also, you put your boat in the water for 2 hours. It's 2 hours to clean it when you're done. There's nothing more corrosive than salt water. So you had to flush out the engine, you had to wash down the boat. And that got a little, not unpleasant, but it sort of put a damper on your experience in the water. Did we talk about my ahi catch in previous episodes?
We have not.
Okay, so at this time I had a boat, but a friend of mine who I met through John and Uncle Al, Garrett. Garrett one day asked me if I want to go fishing for ahi tuna, yellowfin tuna. He says, and we're going to do it in this style from Okinawa called ikishibi. Ikishibi is you don't use a rod and reel. You just we had 3 buckets with 60 feet, 80 feet, 100 feet of rope, serious rope with hooks on them and various bait on each of the 3 had a different kind of bait. And we left the house like at 10 at night. Some old fishermen told us how to line up with some street lights. And my job was to go to the back of the boat, squat down, and as soon as the street lights disappeared, stop. So we were about 3 miles offshore. By now it's 11 at night. I take a nap. Garrett wakes me about 1 in the morning. He takes a nap, and I'm just sitting there. And all of a sudden, I can see the rope coming out of one of the buckets, meaning we got something. Now, there are only 2 fish that will grab bait and stick around and swim in a circle. Most fish will grab the bait and hightail it out. The two fish that stick around are ahi tuna and sharks. And we didn't know till it got close to the surface what we had. And Garrett tells me if it's a shark, he gives me one of these bang sticks. And I think it's got carbon dioxide powered. That if it's a shark and I got to kill it, hit it with the bang stick. And I'm thinking, I got good eye hand coordination, but if I miss, I'm putting a hole in Garrett's boat and down it goes. It gets to the surface. We see the yellow fin, but the line, the rope, is tied around the propeller. So, and one of the things is the laws of fishing like that is to know where your fingers are all the time. And now I knew that my fingers were going to be in the water to unloosen the line from the prop. But we knew it was an ahi, not a shark. So we unloosen it. We have maybe 50, 60 feet of line in the water. By hand, we're pulling in. I pull in about 10 feet of line and I'm exhausted. The fish is somewhat fighting. Garrett, big local guy, he does the rest. There's an expression that fishing is hours of boredom interspersed with moments of sheer terror. Well, the sheer terror hits. We got the boat, we got the shark close to the boat. My job then was to gaff it, a hook at the end of a pole. Boom, boom, left, right. I was 2 for 2. Got it. Before the fish is ever in the boat, Garrett cuts its throat because the more the fish fights, the more it heats up internally. Again, this is ahi, and we're catching it for sashimi, for sushi. And the more it fights, the more it heats up inside, the less attractive the meat is, because it's somewhat cooked by the fish's fighting. So you have to kill it, bleed it immediately. So we bleed it, we pull it into the boat. We discover later it's 180 pounds. It's taller than me, 180 pounds. We get it in the boat. We look around, discover that a couple of knives are missing. One of Garrett was wearing waders. One of them is gone. We're laying back, and all of a sudden I see the tuna like spasm on the floor. I say to Garrett, "Is that normal?" He goes, "No, it's not. It's alive." And he starts pounding it. And we're done. By then it's 3, 4 in the morning. We head back to shore. We go to a fishmonger. And the final insult was the fishmonger hoist was broken. So we had to pick up, Garrett and I had to lift up this ahi, put it on the guy's scale. We learned it weighed 180 pounds. The guy quoted Garrett a price, something like $3 to $5 a pound, depending on how heated up the fish had gotten. And I think Garrett got somewhere in the middle of that. But that fish, that 180-pound ahi, that night or that day was put on a plane, and the next morning was at the Tokyo fish market being sold. And the fish guy told us, if you do it like when they used to bust guys for marijuana, they would give it a street value, the highest they could find, and they would do it per joint value. Well, the guy said if you valued the fish that way, that fish would bring in $100,000.
Wow.
Pretty remarkable and uh, pretty exciting and interesting experience. A couple of weeks later, Garrett takes me out to go marlin, regular deep sea fishing for marlin, and we didn't get a bite. And that gave me a real appreciation of what fishermen do. If you're a salesman and you don't make a sale one day, you didn't make a sale. If you're a fisherman and you don't catch anything, you're out $100 in bait, you're out $100 in gasoline. This was 25 years ago. So it was kind of stressful. Cell phones have changed the fishing industry now. Now you don't need the middleman like that we brought it to. Now guys catch fish, they call up the restaurant. Hey, I caught a mahi mahi today. You got any interest? Guy says no, they just call up the next restaurant. So really changing. Once Dave Michelson and his family were here visiting. Love you, Dave. And we're sitting at Imbe's restaurant, Uncle Imbe's Steakhouse, and all of a sudden, guy walks through the door. It was in a bag, but you could see two fish tails hanging out. One, it was an ahi and a mahi. So I take Dave's son Noah, who must have been 3, 4 years old. I take him into the kitchen because I know Imbe's accepting the fish, and we stayed there for 5, 10 minutes watching Imbe do his thing on filleting the fish, and it blew my mind. I think the kid was impressed too. So yeah, so I learned about the sea. I learned about how to uh, how to behave like a Hawaiian, how to respect older people, how to respect the Aina, where the phrase kama Aina comes from. Aina means land. Kama Aina is from the land. Things never thought I'd know when I was growing up in Brooklyn. And about the ocean, I certainly learned living in New Mexico. So it was a complete different change. But now that 79, and I thought, well, good, 1/3 of my life, 1/3 of my life, 1/3 of my life. Now I need another third. So, because I'm ready to, I'm not thinking of leaving Hawaii, but I'm still together enough to want these experiences.
What was the name of your boat?
The name of the boat was Kakiki Kai. I I looked it up. I think I had to go to the library. I don't think internet was, or there certainly wasn't a Google back then. And because I wanted to name a something after the ticket business. And Kakiki mean so I see that Kakiki means ticket. And I had this Hawaiian friend Zach, and I said to him one day, "If I say Kakiki, what does that mean to you?" And he goes, "Oh, scratching, itching, very small alphabet in Hawaii. I think we have, if you count the commas and the exclamation point, I think we have like 14, 16 letters, characters at most in our alphabet. So words are used to signify more than one thing. So when I asked Zach what kakiki meant, he said scratching, itching, also entrance, tickets. Okay, bingo. And kai means ocean. So the boat was Kakiki Kai, ticket to the ocean. Had it for a year and a half, 2 years. Had it parked down at the small boat harbor. Had it on on its trailer, so we just had to hook it to my truck and then drive it 200 yards and launch it. Um, when I got tired of it and sold it, some guy from the Hilo side came and paid me $15,000 in tens and twenties. Don't ask, don't tell. Okay, thank you very much. But it was interesting to have. Then I got into outrigger canoeing. When Cindy was doing it, it was like a 6-person team, which is the big sport. Like when they paddled into New York on maybe it was the grand opening of something or the 200th anniversary of the country, it would be a 6-man team. But there's also 2-person outrigger canoeing and 1 person. And I bought a 1-person canoe. Also kept that parked down at the small boat harbor, but that you're able to carry and launch it. You were in that, right? Didn't
Yeah.
you? And that was fun. That kept me on the water. It was much more physically challenged than being in a motorboat, so it was more of an aerobic activity also. And did that for a couple of years. My buddy Steve Arnett, who you met, Steve is now 81, and he's still like the best of his age class in Hawaii for 1-person outrigger canoeing. He's an animal. He's in amazing shape. I gave it up after a couple of years, sold my canoe, and that was about the end of my watering experiences until I discovered the dog beach and started taking the dogs to a not official dog beach, but one where they look the other way. And pandemic hit, and I have not been in the ocean since the pandemic.
So you've mentioned the last third, the fourth third of your life, which is One of my favorite words, I guess, maybe lanyap, which is, do you know what lanyap is?
Spell it.
It's like Laginappe, lanyap. It's a New Orleans word. It's really
Right?
one of the greatest words, and it's like bonus or extra. And if you looked up the definition of it, it would be like the 13th donut in a baker's dozen, for
All
example.
right.
Lanyap. It's a great word. So it's like you're
Well,
getting extra.
I'm in that
You're
period of my life. You know, we probably discussed my dad was in his mid 50s when he passed. I I never thought I'd get this far and get this far relatively healthy and active. So this is definitely bonus time for Pops. I don't see myself moving. The one thing that gave us pause when we decided to move to Hawaii, one thing that obviously didn't stop us, but we had to consider was healthcare. You know, you're 3,000 miles from mainland America. Now, after 20, probably the whole time, 27, 28 years of having Kaiser here, so one thing that would prevent me from moving anywhere is because I am so grateful and impressed for Kaiser here. It's the way healthcare should run. Everything under one roof, no suits making decisions whether or not you get this treatment or not. And for us, we get the extra bonus of going to Oahu for for any kind of thing that you need a hospital, you need a surgery, you need anything. They fly you and a companion on their dime to Oahu, put you up if necessary, and it's a lot. There's over 1 million people there. It's a major league hospital, and the new Kona facility here is first rate. So I'd be hesitant to move for that reason at all. Secondly, very few places. I'm spoiled by living in a very open area that like I said, 200,000 people on the entire island, maybe 40,000 people in Kona proper, Kailua Kona proper, maybe 65,000 people in the Kona district, and what I will gladly sacrifice some of the things that you sacrifice in a smaller place to live for the openness, for the privacy, for everything that Kona has to offer, and especially the climate.
Are there any things in this last bonus period of your life that you want to do that you haven't done? Things like, I
Uh,
mean, what is there
we
bucket
we've
list type
tra-
stuff?
no, we've traveled quite a bit while we've been here. We've gone to Europe a number of times. We've been to Tahiti. We've been to Fiji. In the last few years, my any interest I had that would have fit into a bucket list of traveling has gone. You know, the hassle, the inconvenience. So that if they could beam me like Star Wars, if they could Star Trek, they say get in this little pod and you'll be in Amsterdam in 4 seconds. I'm there. But having to deal with humanity and the general public, I'm I'm happy to stay home more. So for a bucket list, I'm just living through you guys vicariously, just being taking joy in your guys' lives, getting to the mainland to see families, weddings, bar mitzvahs, whatever. It's been just been great. So if I don't have that fourth chapter, if the fourth chapter of my life does not take place in Hawaii, I'm okay.
But it probably will. Right
Oh,
now.
but yes, I think I misspoke. If it doesn't, if it if the fourth chapter of my life takes place in Hawaii, I'm okay with that. If I would have liked again, I wouldn't mind going to East Asia. I wouldn't mind going to Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand. That's the only thing I have any interest in seeing. Been to Europe a number of times. Now I'd go, I'd have a Canadian flag sewn on my jacket, so no one would assume I was American, which happened to us. Cindy and I we were in Amsterdam and we took a 1 week cruise up the Norwegian fjords. It was beautiful. I'm not a fan of cruise ships, but this was the only way I'd get to see the fjords in Norway. And we're on a boat with all Europeans. And one day I asked if the seats were empty, we could sit down and eat. And he said, yeah. And he said, are you guys English? And we say, no, Americans. And like that, the expression on their face changed. They didn't want to talk to us. And that was before, that was when we still had presidents we admired and we weren't that bad. Um, we also had an incident in a market in Spain, in Madrid once, where a guy standing next to us was making little hot dogs. That was his gig. And George W. Bush was the president. And it was always my policy, don't speak politics unless somebody brings it up. And the guy overhears us talking and says, you guys are Americans. What do you think of your president? And so he asked me, so I told him. And then the guy became our brother. He, he, he ended up, he was in America writing a book. He went to America to write a book about Sitting Bull and ended up signing a copy and giving us his book, especially when right after I told him about my dad being in the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, which when my father was alive, and I said, "Can I talk about this if I ever go to Spain?" He said, "No, I wouldn't suggest it." So that I was going to keep close to the vest, but this guy was a brother now. We discussed that, and he embraced us. We took a we took a walking tour of Barcelona once on dealing with the Spanish Civil War, which is kind of a funny story. There's maybe a dozen of us, and the guy leading the tour says, "What's your interest in the Spanish Civil War?" And one person goes, "Oh, I'm interested in communism in the 30s." One guy says, "Oh, I'm interested in anarchism." Someone says, "Oh, I'm just interested in world history." It comes to me, and I say, "Well, my dad was in the Abraham Lincoln Brigade." And all of a sudden, I'm a celebrity. I mean, nothing I did. And it was kind of embarrassing. And I even apologized when people would ask me questions. I say, my dad never spoke about it. And Nick, the guy who ran the tours, told me, don't feel bad. He goes, everybody else he's had any exposure with, that's a relative from that era, nobody talks about it. Love Spain. Love Spain.
Yo también.
Uh, yes. Yes. Almost died in Spain when I had my prostate issue. They took care of me, sent me home. Kaiser took care of me when I was done, but I have nothing but warm feelings for Spain.
You said one thing you don't have warm feelings for is cruises. You have a funny saying about cruises.
Oh yes, they're for the newlywed, the overfed, the nearly dead. That's who cruises consist of. So we took Cindy's folks on a cruise for their fifth. That's the first one they ever went on. Went to took a cruise to Alaska out of Vancouver. Flew to Vancouver, caught the boat. It was places I'd never see and will never see again, and that was nice. But the cruise experience isn't my jam.
So getting back to the land yap of your life
Yeah.
will just be hanging out in Hawaii, hanging with dogs, living vicariously. Nothing like in Hawaii that you want to do or feel the need to do.
I want to continue playing sports, and it's a very sports oriented community. Because the weather's so nice. Everybody's outdoors 365 days a year. If they're not jogging, we're the host of the Ironman championships here. So you see bicyclists, you see joggers, you see swimmers all the time. We have this is we have 20 27. No, yeah, I think 27 softball senior softball teams on the island. It's 27, say like there's 15 guys on the team. That's 400 players out of 120,000 people of senior adults playing softball. That's amazing. For basketball, we had an over 35 full court league. All this stopped when the pandemic hit. We had an over 35 full court league and over 50 full court, over 40 and an over 50 half court league. And just before the pandemic started, we were lobbying and we had it for an over 60 league. Then everything went to shit after the pandemic and leagues have never returned. But there's pickleball now. We now have, they've added eight more pickleball courts down by the gym where there already is eight. And then there's a location by Keoho Bay south of us that has a dozen courts. It's a very healthy community because of that, and it's keeping me as young as it can keep me.
You recently received an honor you never wanted.
Yes, yes. I had this one fellow, George Manu, sweetheart of a man. 10 years ago, my brother moved to Hawaii, and he's on my basketball team, and I bring him down to the gym and introduce him to everybody, and everybody's friendly and nice and shakes hands hello. I introduce him to Uncle George. George gets up from the bench and hugs Mel. And what a Hawaiian move. What a great guy. We played on a couple of teams together. He lives he lived about 45 miles from Kona. Would come 3 times a week to play basketball with us recently. And George, I would tell him every time, George, you cannot stop playing because that would make me the oldest player in the game. And one day, George came on a Monday. We played Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. George came on Monday and looked a little tired. And I asked him, and he said, I'm just tired. I'm okay. Came down on Wednesday to play. Got a phone call right before the games were going to start. Something about his truck, which he drove 45 miles each way 3 times a week in a very gas inefficient truck to play basketball. And he was a working guy from Hawaii. Shows you how much he loved the game. He comes on that Wednesday, gets a phone call that his truck was ready from the mechanic, and leaves. And then that night, in his sleep, he passes away. Which gives me the title that I never wanted. Now my friend Roger, a Philly guy who's my age, Roger's telling me, because he's like 2 months younger than me, he goes, you can't give up the game because he doesn't want to be the oldest player in the game. So rest in peace, Uncle George. But that was the way to go, playing basketball to the end, relatively healthy until the very end, and then going without any drama, without any pain, without any illness. If that happens to me, consider it the final blessing of a blessed life. But unfortunately, George's passing put a damper on the game, and now it's hard to get 4 guys to play. The last 2 or 3 months, it's also softball season, and most of the softball players are pussies, and they won't play basketball because they're afraid of getting hurt for softball. When softball's like walking down the street compared to basketball being running around the block. So we lost some of the softball players. They'll come back in a couple of months. And I'm still on the softball team. Play. My deal with them is I'll play when needed. I don't like the practices. Practices ended up boring me. Just sit around, talk story, and shad fly balls. But I'm on a good team. When the Snowbirds leave, which will be any day now, I'll probably have to play every week because we'll lose some of our players. but it's a statewide softball league, and every year the state tournament is held in a different island. It goes down the island chain. So it's started Kauai, goes from Kauai one year, Oahu the next, Maui the next, Kona next. Then it goes back to Kauai and comes down the chain. So last year we were in Kona. The state finals were in Kona, which means this year it's Kauai. And that was a very interesting way. In fact, it's very colorful. The opening day, you've got maybe 1,000 guys out there in gaudy, colorful softball uniforms. And the mayor of whatever island comes out to throw out the first ball. It's a very colorful, beautiful thing to see. This is a over 60 league. Now I'm being recruited to play on this traveling over 80 team that plays on mainland tournaments, and they're a lot less strict there. I think you're allowed three guys in the game from 77 to 80. So since today I'm 11 months. I'm starting to give my birthday like kids give theirs. I'm 30 months old. I'm 2.5. I think I'm 11 months from 80. So, so I may take them up on it. So you may see me playing softball on the mainland one of these days. And I still got I could still hit. I was playing shortstop for the first few seasons, hurt my shoulder, had to play first base for one year till my shoulder healed, and then I've been playing third ever since. I can't throw from the hole in short anymore, but I can still hit line drive singles. No power, but I'm still there. And we play with a much bigger ball, so I needed a much bigger glove than I had. I brought my New Mexico glove when I first got here. I think it's a 12-inch glove, which is normal for baseball, normal for regular softball. And now I'm playing with a 14-inch glove and contemplating getting a 15-inch glove. They do that for safety precautions. No sliding for safety precautions. They've recently added the pitcher has to wear a mask for safety. But it's fun. There's camaraderie. I'd much rather play basketball and enjoy the camaraderie of basketball players as opposed to softball. But it gets me out there and keeps me active.
But you definitely enjoy the post games with the neighboring island
That
squads and teams.
well, it wasn't the neighboring island when we first got here. Again, it's all changed with the pandemic. The home team would host a potluck after the game, and so you would sit. So we would go. There are a whole bunch of little villages on the island of Hawaii that were plantations, different sugar plantations, where they deliberately divide and conquered. Like they would bring people from Korea, bring people from China, bring people from the Philippines, but mingle them. Divide and conquer, because if you had all one speaking one language, they could all say, "Hey, screw the boss," and that never occurred. But these people were true Hawaiians. They would never. Some of them never left the state. They would go to neighbor islands for state tournaments. You'd meet one guy told me he worked the 1964 World's Fair with his uncle, which I had gone to. But at the end of a softball game, when they were hosting, I would get to sit and break bread with people I would have no other opportunity to do that to. Most of the time, it was like a high school dance with the girls on one side, boys on the other. We'd go up there. My softball team was all Howleys, and they would sit alone. I just wanted to intermingle with these people and learn their story, and that was educational, interesting, and fun to do.
All right, so you live on an island with a active volcano and earthquakes, and we just had an earthquake here yesterday in San Diego that we felt. Do you have? And there was obviously the Maui fires. Do you have fears of living on an island and the dangers that can come from that?
There's lots of, and we also have tsunami danger. Remember, Cindy's shop got wiped out when due to an earthquake in Japan, which created tsunamis that hit us, and her shop was right down by the ocean. We're 800 feet elevation, 850 feet elevation, so that's not a fear. And we experienced. I've been in two 7.0 earthquakes. The 89 one at Candlestick, which we discussed, and then one Sunday I'm going to play golf with John and Al and all the guys, and I'm pulling into Mahalo Golf Course, and I go over a speed bump, and it's like I've never come off the speed bump from that second on, and I figured, oh shit, I busted a tire or something going over the speed bump. Pulled into the parking lot, got out of my truck, went and looked behind, and a bunch of guys are standing there and go, no, brah, no, that was an earthquake. And then, and John Kang was behind me. He did the same thing. He felt it on the road. John does the same thing. He gets out of his truck, goes back and look. I say, no, no, it was an earthquake. And as he and I are talking, a aftershock hits and it buckles one of the metal buildings. We could watch it buckling. We were there for a tournament, and of course they called the tournament off. But they said, "You guys want here? You want to go play?" We said, "Well, you're pretty safe on a golf course. We really are." And the only damage we saw, I don't know if you remember Macaulay, but on the third hole, a par five, there was a rock wall right through the middle of the fairway where nobody could clear it. So it would have to be your second shot would have to go over the rock wall. And that was old school rock wall, built 100, 200 years ago by Hawaiians. So it had no mortar, no cement. It was just freestanding. And by the time we got to the third hole, that thing was in shambles. But that was the second 7.0 earthquake. Cindy was in the house, and we have a lot of glass windows and glass doors. She said they were all buckling. Kim, our friend Kim from the sunglass store, Kim was in Walmart buying golf balls to meet us, and the whole front of Walmart came down, and he had to climb over the fence at the garden area to get out. I don't know if he ever paid for the golf balls, but he climbed over and he said he could come join us at golf. It was scary, and there's always that in the back of your mind that as we speak, the volcano was going off again, which it did for the first 15 years we lived here, which sucks in terms of air quality. Today's today's not too bad, but there are times standing on the lanai. If my Ken, who played golf with Ken, would come by and he'd look at the ocean, and he'd go, "What they do to the Pacific?" You couldn't even see it. The air was so thick. We haven't had that in almost 15 years, but it started again. I went to see it a couple of times the first few months we were here, and then visitors would come and want to see. Naturally, they'd want to see it, and I would say, "Yeah, here's my car keys. I'm not going down there again." But it is, it's like living on the moon. Half the ground on the Big Island is lava rocks, and we're dealing with it again now.
Well, we're about an hour in, so maybe a good time to wrap up. But one of the things that I've been thinking about, and I guess I've been focused a lot on this, the fourth third, the lanyap of your life.
Right?
Um, and I remember one time you said to me, we got to talk about when I die. And I'm like, I don't really want to talk about that, but it's inevitable for all of us.
Yeah.
And you said something really comforting to me about it, and you said some funny things too. You said you talked about marijuana and the role that
Mm-hmm.
it played in your life, and I may have the quote wrong, but you said, at my celebration of life, which should definitely be a celebration because
Definitely.
my life has been really amazing and blessed, and you lived long enough and had a great enough life that when it's time for you to go, celebrate it, don't mourn it. you also told me about the role marijuana played in your life,
Yeah,
which was whatever you list, whatever you list of the first nine things that I did that were accomplishments. The tenth should be
I did 1 through 9. I did 1 through 9 smoking weed. Oh no, I'm a proponent of it. For me, if I had, it's somewhat stressful having a business and young kids, and it went, just sailed right over. Any stress sailed right over me, and I credit marijuana use for that. I really do. But I also want to say that just about a year ago, which I told you guys about recently, I'm now referring to it as the dress rehearsal for the first scene of the third act of my life when I had that false cancer scare. And that gives you time to reflect. And my reflection is if I die tomorrow, I will die a proud man, thanks to mainly thanks to you guys. Thanks to you, Jenny, Kira. I've accomplished what I need to. I've lived a third of my life in Hawaii. When the end will come, the Grim Reaper is undefeated, and just know that there's no mourning. There is no more. I used to tell you that if I dropped dead in a basketball game, definitely no mourning, because that's how I'd want to go. But yeah, no, I've been a blessed man. I've led a blessed life, and I will go out as a proud guy.
perfect. Good way to
Yeah.
end. So,
Yes, it is. All
all
right,
right.
brah.
Thanks,
Love you,
Pops.
and enjoy your outings with fish.
Yeah, I mean, for the 10 people that are listening or watching to this, Tuesdays with Pops may take a bit of a hiatus as I'm about to go on fish tour and see Jazz Fest and go live my life. And, I'm not in the final third or
No.
the fourth third yet. So
Yeah,
I'm
you're at the
still
midway
gonna,
point. You're at the
I am
midway point. Yeah,
best case.
yeah,
But
yeah.
so, so there may be a couple week delay, but depending on what happens, maybe we'll be back and just chatting on Tuesdays with Pops. So love you, Dad.
Right on, bro. Love you, dude.